Hello, everyone. I'm Priyanka Sharma, and I'm the Executive Director of the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. So, you may have heard of our flagship open source project called Kubernetes. We host that alongside 180 plus other projects. And some of them that you might know about are Envoy, Cilium, etcd, Prometheus. It's a long list. And there's also a bunch of security projects in our portfolio. And I have the honor today of chatting with a key personality in our ecosystem who's done so much great work, Liz Rice. Hi, Liz.
Hi, Priyanka. Thanks so much.
I am familiar with a lot of your great work, though even I feel like I can't keep up. She's so prolific. But for the audience's benefit, it'd be great if you can share your history with Cloud Native.
Sure. Yeah. So I've been involved in cloud native and what I'd even describe as a container world for really quite a long time. I wrote a book about container security. I've also since written a book about learning eBPF. I'm currently Chief Open Source Officer with Isovalent, which is the company that originally created the Cilium project that you mentioned, really known for cloud native connectivity, networking, and security. And I'm also involved in the CNCF. I used to be on the technical oversight committee. I'm currently on the governing board. And really involved in the Cilium project as well. So it's CNCF is a huge focus of what I do.
You have done so much for this ecosystem, and you described it, right? You've served on the technical oversight committee. Now you're helping us in the governing board. So you are a very important presence for us. And I think we, as an ecosystem, people like us, we align because we believe open source is the way forward. But in a lot of circles, open source security is seen as an oxymoron. So discuss.
I was a late convert to open source. I spent a lot of my early career in proprietary software. And when I realized, my eyes were open to the benefits of having things out in the public, having many eyes, having so many different people using software. One of the benefits I think that maybe doesn't get talked about quite so much is just how field hardening can happen through an open source project being used. And from a security perspective, that's great because, the more people are using something, the more you're likely to spot vulnerabilities. People are also looking at the code and making changes to the code. So there's all kinds of benefits from, the sunlight being the best disinfectant, as they say.
Yes, I 100% believe that. And by the way, I would never have guessed that you were a late convert. I was like, you have born and brought up in this.
When I realized it, the power of open source, it was eye-opening. Yeah.
And I think it would be so nice if we could carry along more CISOs with us and give them this awakening. So if you had to share with CISOs things they need to be aware of in the open source security ecosystem right now, what would you say?
Yeah, there's so many great tools. There's so much great content and information out there about security and how to do things like SIG Security doing amazing work on things like threat modeling. So there's fabulous initiatives all around the kind of open source ecosystem. Personally, I've been really involved with a technology called eBPF, which is it's a kind of a platform within the Linux kernel, and it allows us to change the way the Linux kernel behaves. And that can have really incredible, powerful benefits for security as well as networking and observability and so on. So I'm really excited about that as a future platform for open source security tools.
Yeah, absolutely. I think eBPF has made such a comeback once people have realized how versatile it is. And you're totally right. That's what people should focus on and get to know in their organizations.
Yeah. And I think people are unlikely to write their own eBPF tools, because it's kind of kernel programming. But there's so many really great projects out there that are using it as a platform and, really efficient. Cilium has a sub-project called Tetragon that does runtime security, observability, and enforcement. And we're able to do incredibly low overhead, less than 2%, ability to monitor, sensitive file access, sensitive network access, all these things that you really want to be able to spot.
Yeah.
And in the past, maybe there's technology to do it, but the overhead of adding that into your platform is significant. But now we can do it so much more efficiently with eBPS.
That is awesome. I think the DevOps movement has become the DevSecOps movement, which seems to have really enabled developers on orgs to plug things in easier than the past.
Definitely. I mean, I think the way that DevOps brought this idea of continuous, CI, CD, everything happening, small changes being built and deployed at once. And it gives this opportunity to also build security into those workflows and be thinking about security at all the different stages of the life cycle. So DevSecOps is a bit of a clumsy term, but I think the kind of the philosophy of it, that thinking about security throughout your organization. Not that everybody needs to be a security expert, but that at every stage, there are opportunities to make things more secure. That's really important.
Yeah, I think this shift left movement where you don't need to be an expert, but just understand. With DevOps, it was like, just understand the ops side a little bit or the dev side a little bit. And now with DevSecOps, understand the security side a little bit more. I think it's invaluable because it breaks down the silos that people have, even their sense of self of, I am so-and-so, I don't do that. Breaking that down is healthy. And now, as whether we like it or not, the AI revolution is playing a role in all the products people are releasing. And I'm sure CISOs are scratching their heads of how to think about security, AI, will that shift left? What's going on? What do you have to say to them?
I mean, AI is clearly, rearing its head in all kinds of areas of the industry. And I'm sure it's going to play a part in the arms race. Security is a constant battle between attackers finding creative new ways to compromise systems and the defense side, the building of, tools to detect those attacks and prevent them. And I'm sure AI will come into play on both sides of that equation. So it'll be interesting to see how it's used creatively. I think what we're really gonna, AI is clearly a bit of a hype cycle thing right now.
It's okay, you can say that.
And I think we need to not sort of take our eye off the ball in terms of actually at a lower level in the system, we'll be able to enforce security rules, security policies. There's lots of projects in the CNCF around that, things like OPA, Falco, Tetragon that I mentioned before, that's part of Cilium. All these projects that are really providing ways to, at different stages in the life cycle, apply policies and, apply defense in depth.
That makes so much sense. It's a foundational layer. It doesn't matter what workload we're talking about. Maybe we're talking about AI, maybe we're talking about something else. But ultimately, security has to be a layer below, affecting everything. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. I like what you said, by the way, about this arms race that AI is enabling between the attackers and the attacked. Is that?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure it's a good thing, but I think we'll see.
Sorry, you're right.
But I mean, I think we'll see AI being used, in society in general. We'll see it being used in incredibly positive and creative and, ways that help people be more efficient. But we will also see it being used for bad. And that applies in the world of security too, unfortunately.
That's so true. I do hope that DevSecOps becomes easier with the help of AI features in our tooling, because I heard some folks have been able to democratize access to information about systems a lot easier when you can ask questions in natural language.
Yes.
So I hope we see more products like that.
Yes, I think the ability to say, how do I secure this particular type of workload, or what's the best practices? That's the kind of thing that probably today's technology could be useful.
Or like, what's wrong? Tell me what's going on.
If we have AI also able to look at, how do I create my network firewall rules to sort of shrink wrap my applications, that will also be a good use, I think.
Totally, yeah. The developer productivity can really go up if the right features are developed. So that's super exciting, all of this stuff. And one thing I want to touch on, switching gears a little bit, is there's been a lot of noise, just like there was on the AI front, about this whole S-bomb secure and supply chain security. How do you think of that work versus the projects in CNCF? What do we need? What do CISOs and their teams need to focus on?
Yeah, I mean, supply chain security got a lot of focus in the last, I guess, couple of years.
Yeah.
I mean, there's the White House directive, and clearly being able to know what your application's being built on, what dependencies they have, what vulnerabilities those dependencies have, hugely important. And that's been a big focus of, for example, OpenSSF and some of the projects within CNCF as well. And that's fabulous, and I'm a big believer in defence in depth. But I do sometimes think we've all shifted a little bit to looking at this kind of dependency management, very important. We need to also think about what's happening at runtime.
Yeah.
These kind of SBOM vulnerability detection and management solutions can only help you with known vulnerabilities. What they can't help you with is an unexpected attack, a 0 day. And that's where I think runtime security, and particularly these eBPF-based tools, can be super powerful, because we already have it in the networking world, right? We already have firewalls. We already say, I'm only going to allow traffic to and from certain destinations. In the cloud native world, we've for a while been able to do that with network policies, restricting at a more granular level what traffic can flow. But now we can also do things like sort of runtime execution detection. So being able to see things like, is this file access expected? Is this workload supposed to talk to that database? Was this workload supposed to run that executable? And being able to detect that with like these really low overhead tools and even prevent them gives us this whole new arsenal for preventing 0 day attacks. And I'm really excited about that. I think, in a few years' time, we'll be looking back and seeing runtime security policies being used in the same way that today we use firewall policies.
Wow. Yeah, I think it goes back to what you were saying a few minutes earlier about security is foundational, and you need to look at it from the bottom up and across the swath of all our concerns.
Yeah.
We may have some topics du jour, maybe whether it's supply chain
AI.
security, AI, whatever. But ultimately, it's the whole, the runtime and all of that needs to be the focus so that you are reactive, proactive, all of it.
Yes.
All of it.
Yes, I like that, being both reactive and proactive is super important.
We have to have a comprehensive viewpoint. We actually cannot chase fads because you got to be secure everywhere.
Yeah, and the flip side of this is that CISOs have almost overwhelming set of problems to deal with and set of potential solutions. They're bombarded with these ideas and these sort of different philosophies and different ways of tackling the problem. So it is a lot. And defense in depth is an important philosophy, but it means there's so many different layers that you want to put in place. So good luck, CISOs.
I know. I do not envy the CISO job. I'm like, boy, that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, so I think at least, this is a little bit like preaching to the choir, but I am a convert in terms of, hey, open source security is the way forward. Every CISO should look into this and encourage their teams to participate. Yeah. How would you recommend people get involved with open source security in general and cloud native in particular?
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of organizations out there focused on security, and there are tons of really great projects. We've mentioned a few, like Cilium and Falco. There's the security SIG that's part of, or TAG rather, TAG security that's part of the CNCF. That do some amazing work in terms of threat modeling of different open source projects and helping open source projects understand their security posture. Security is quite a bit of a specialist subject, and a lot of open source maintainers don't necessarily have a security background. So having this group of people that they can come to and ask for advice, maybe get an assessment, even just things as simple as, have you got a procedure in place for people to report security vulnerabilities to you? And do you know what you would do if somebody sends you a vulnerability? It's not rocket science, but you want to put those policies in place.
Yes.
Even as a small open source project, it's worth having it, because then you can enable your community to do responsible security disclosures and help you make your project more secure. And then when your open source project takes off and it's being adopted by, hundreds of Fortune 500 companies or something, you've got this, you're going to need to have this kind of security process.
Have the foundation.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that organizations like the CNCF can really help projects with, helping give those kind of guidelines and ideas and best practices around what you can do as a project maintainer who's probably mostly focused on adding features and functionality to your project. But just having that kind of guidance and advice can be really helpful.
That makes sense. Yeah. For those who may not know, TAG stands for Technical Advisory Group. These are bodies within the CNCF organizational structure that I would say report into the Technical Oversight Committee. Would you characterize it?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
They do. And they're very, there are tags in all sorts of different areas as well as security. And they're a very good place for people to come and get involved, bringing whatever skills they currently have, getting involved in something they're passionate about. This applies to projects as well. There's a lot of projects that are really keen to welcome people who want to contribute into the projects. And then also we have these, events like we're here in Paris for KubeCon, and it's a fabulous opportunity to meet people, face to face, the people that you've been working with on open source.
Over 12,000 people, I might add, right by the Eiffel Tower. Hang with us.
We had yesterday our first ever Cilium Developer Summit in person.
Oh, cool.
And, we had people from all around the world who've been contributing to the project for years. It's the first time some of them have met in person. So it's
awesome.
Really lovely.
Events really help. And that was part of the reason why we got started with Cloud Native Security Con. And I think you were one of the inaugural chairs for that event.
Yes.
Yeah. So is that happening this year?
I believe that is happening in June, if I'm getting that right, in Seattle. And if you're a security, you're interested in security, then the Security Con is a really great place to see, the Cloud Native project, the people that are involved, everybody in one place. And it's a little bit easier to find each other at an event like Cloud Native Security Con than here at KubeCon with 12,500 people.
Yeah, that's cozier and packed with all the latest content of the open source projects in our ecosystem and the technologies and, the people, process, teams, conversations that you need to be having. So you should definitely check that out. And then before we break, I will ask you a last question.
Okay.
Do you feel secure using cloud native projects?
Oh, that's a great question. You can think of that at so many different levels. Yeah. Almost when you say secure as an individual, or the word feeling, makes me think about, sort of personal involvement and how welcoming this community can be. And, it's huge. There's a huge diversity of opinions. And that's great because you can find like-minded people, here, and you can find so much expertise. But at the same time, that expertise is often, it's from people who are also super nice. And so I want to answer that question by thinking about it in terms of how easy I found it to get involved in our community over the years and how many great friends I've made here.
Yes, I love your take on that answer, and I 100% agree. I felt secure engaging in this ecosystem. I could see the expertise. It was like it brims, right? You can feel the expertise of the people. And at the same time, they're so welcoming. And there's an element of trust that develops that you just know they're doing their very best to make sure these projects are stewarded in a responsible manner and can be used at scale in production by all kinds of folks.
People who are, and I think maybe we should also mention the companies that support these projects as well. There are some amazing success stories. I'd like to say Isovalent is one of those cases where, you can build a business around open source.
Yes.
The whole conversation we could have about open source and not a business model, but that there's so much interest in the projects and the technology, and that kind of whole ecosystem. I mean, another way of thinking about security is how sustainable this is, how much longevity there is, how solid are these projects and companies. And that's something that we've really worked hard at, I think, in the foundation, to make sure that projects, to the best that we can, are well supported, well maintained, have all the right kind of security processes, but also have like maintainers. And you get that through awareness and events like this. And, I could refer back to yesterday's Citizen Developer Summit. Hopefully that event happening will reinvigorate people's enthusiasm for being involved. And that's what all these in-person events are really about.
And the foundation also tries to help with all the security audits and effort around the security checklists. So we're all in it together. And that's the best part of this ecosystem. No one is alone when you're working with cloud native. So I hope you had that takeaway as you heard us talk, because we love hanging out, as do all the other folks over here. And I hope you have a great show and join our cloud native community.
Definitely.
Thank you, Liz.
Thank you.
It was so fun.
Great.